Now I'm lying to my parents. I'm lying to myself. And I just felt like I was betraying God in a way of everything that I knew I shouldn't be doing. Being broken down as much as I was broken down, in the end, has rebuilt me in this beautiful goddess, version of myself that I am today.
I turned 50, y'all, and I started a podcast.
Really, age is just a number. It comes down to how we choose to live and the choices we make in our life, and those things accumulate.
Don't let the programming of life keep you from doing things every single day that make you happy.
When we feel good, it's easy to think good.
Life is not happening to you. You are your life. You are happening to your life. Hey, and welcome to the podcast. In this episode, I am talking with my friend Ashley, where she shares her very intimate experience in a sugaring relationship, where she was a sugar baby and had a sugar daddy for over 3 years. We talk about kind of the construct of these relationships and how they can be and what they might mean and how it feels to be in them. What are the positive aspects? What are the potential negative aspects? Are there any long-lasting effects? What can we take from these types of relationships and incorporate them into more traditional modern-day relationships? I think it's a fascinating conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. And remember, make every day a good day to die. Hey, Ashley.
Hey, lady, how are you?
I'm good. I'm happy to be talking to you. I don't get to see you very much anymore, or lately.
I know, but hopefully when you come back, we'll be able to get back on our monthly hangouts.
Yeah, at least monthly. But I'm very interested and have very much been looking forward to talking to you today about this subject, which before you and I talked about it, I really didn't know much about it. And the subject, and you correct me if you know better. I mean, you do know better, but the subject is sugaring, or, having a sugar daddy or a sugar mommy. I mean, is there another way that you would describe it, or other?
No, I mean, I call it sugaring in general, just because that's just what I've always heard it as, is sugar daddy, sugar mama, sugar baby. That just seems like to be like the ultimate word used, whether it's in a song, you hear it in a song, or you hear a friend talking about it, or I don't know, looking it up on the internet. It seems to be a well-rounded word for it.
Sugaring. Okay. Sugaring. So just so that we have just a general idea, like as we get started, I mean, I did a little bit of research because I didn't really know a lot about this, and in anticipation of this conversation. So I found this interesting definition on Psychology Today. It was an article on Psychology Today, which I'll cite in the show notes. But this is just a kind of a little bit of an overarching definition. So a sugar baby is somebody who receives gifts, including cash, in exchange for company, which can include sex, but doesn't have to. A sugar daddy, a person who gives such gifts, is typically wealthier and older than the sugar baby. The case of sugar mamas is rarer, probably since women are less willing to pay for sex. Sugaring is also present among homosexual people, and the author says that in his article, he focuses on the most common relation, which is between sugar babies and sugar daddies. He goes on to say that some sugar daddies provide allowances, namely a fixed amount every week or every month, some pay by date. Sometimes there's no concrete agreement, and the sugar baby relies on the gifting whims of the sugar daddy. Some sugar daddies want to meet several times a week. Others prefer once a month. It can range from hand holding and cuddling to a full sexual encounter. Sugar daddies are usually seeking both companionship and sex. So that's kind of the general kind of overview. Is Is there anything more you want to contribute to that before we kind of get into your story that we're going to talk through today?
Sugaring is when two people come together with a mutual agreement on what one wants to receive and give. And so it doesn't matter what it is. It's just mainly like being so clear on your intentions of what you're looking for out of that person and what you're willing to give. So I would just add that little touch too.
Yes, that it's a understood agreement, and you're agreeing that there is going to be some kind of transaction. I'm going to contribute this, and the other person's going to contribute this, and both people are getting something that they want. And it's like, unlike normal dating relationships, a lot of that goes kind of unsaid or assumed or manipulated for, or all of these kind of out here things. But in sugaring, it's just a very direct, like, understood.
Their intent, yeah, very understood. It's what is missing out of a lot of relationships, which is coming at it, asking the questions. What do you want? What am I willing to give? Being very clear with yourself, and then being very clear with what I expect from, in return. So yeah.
As I was doing this research and thinking about your story, and kind of, I've taken some time to really think through this, and it is really interesting because a lot of the articles that I've read kind of position sugaring somewhere in between dating and, prostitution, basically. I mean, but there's this continuum of relationships, right? Traditional dating, prostitution, and sugaring is like somewhere in between, where it can be very dating-like. But you don't have these undisclosed goals. Like in one article I read, somebody was saying that, like, in traditional relationships, a lot of people might say, my goal is to get married and have babies. But in a sugaring
Stay-at-home
relationship,
wife or stay-at-home dad, and their sole goal is to just be this while someone else goes out there and provides for the family.
right?
Kind of like an arrangement in a way.
Right. Especially, yeah. But a lot of times in the dating world, you don't I mean, some people really do state exactly what they want. I mean, and we can talk a little bit more about that too. But I agree with you as far as when sugaring goes. You have that communication. You have that direct understanding of what the transaction is, and that's got to feel very freeing and very, I don't know. You tell me how it feels. So
it is.
Do you want to?
It is. The last two, guys that I've kind of started to date, or think about dating, there was no mystery in between. What are they looking for? What's going to happen? Are we just kind of going with the flow? Like, there's nothing I'm holding back anymore, because I just come out and say, here, this is what I want. I want X, Y, and Z. What are you looking for? Can we, meet somewhere in the middle and get where we want to go, and as far as a long-term relationship stands, and it's more freeing when you just are able to ask the right questions and get to straight kind of to the point versus wasting time.
Right. And so you're talking about you're saying right now, these last two relationships, these are people that you were interested in actually having a real dating love relationship with.
Correct.
That you are now utilizing some skills that you learned in your history you're like using those skills in your current relationships, and you're finding that beneficial.
Correct.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we back up and start at the beginning, and why don't you share your story? Tell us how we got here.
So how I got here was I went through a severe heartbreak early in life. I was around 18 years old. And from that heartbreak, just threw me in a loop for things. And when I started to want to date again, or kind of date again, I just was wanting to look for someone not to fall in love with, but someone where I can just go do life activities with, where we were going to go to the movies and we were going to, go grab dinner and go on hikes, and just someone of the opposite sex to be with. And so I was explaining to a girlfriend, I was in cosmetology school at the time, and I was explaining to her, I just want someone, like a companion, but I don't want to have any of like the relationship status kind of, anything added extra to that than just company. And so we were talking, and she goes, well, it's kind of like an arrangement. And I was like, what's an arrangement? I'm 18 years old. And she's like, well, there's this site where you can go and you can find, you kind of like put a profile together, and you can put on your profile, what are you looking for? What are you like willing to give? Some of your photos, fill out your description of who you are. And so I get on the site, and it was called Seeking Arrangements, which I think is still around.
Mm-hmm.
And this is right when it first launched over 10 years ago. I can't believe that. Over 10 years ago. And so I got on the site, and being who I was very professional, and my profile came off as a resume. And the first person that I tracked was this guy who viewed it as a resume, actually, and asked if we can meet up for coffee. And he wanted me to be an intern for a fashion magazine that he was starting in Seattle. And he wanted me to be his right-hand executive assistant intern and put all of the photo shoots together and help assist with the different directors of the magazine and putting all the pieces together and bringing it to life. And it was a digital magazine, so it wasn't a physical copy. And it was a lot of fun. And I got to go out, hang out with him, and everything was a business expense for him. So we would go get drinks and have fun and explore this world. And it was just simply friendship. It was nothing more than that. I really didn't dive into exploring more than that until I turned, well, not with him, but I didn't explore other profiles, other men on Seeking Arrangements until 21. And that's when I moved to Arizona.
So let me just interrupt you for 1 second. So this first gentleman that you met on Seeking Arrangements, you were 18. How old was he?
I want to say 34, 35.
And how long did that relationship last?
We're still friends today.
But how long were you actively kind of working with him and running around?
So it was 18, 19. So it was about 2.5 years.
Yeah. And so for that whole time, he paid for every single dinner, every single event. Did he ever buy you clothes or give you gifts?
I'd get to keep the clothes that I'd go to Nordstrom and Eddie Bauer and all these places to get clothes for the shoot, and I'd be able to keep them.
Really?
Yeah, it was awesome. And some of the jewelry, some not, some of the things that they asked for in return. But usually when you go to these big brands and you're asking for items for a photo shoot, they don't expect them to be given back.
Wow. And did you guys travel together as well, or was it all in Seattle?
It was all in Seattle.
Uh-huh.
I don't think it was all in Seattle. And then go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
From there, he also just opened this world of meeting all these other high-end people, and then just naturally involved with a scene. It was starting to create a certain lifestyle, a certain scene. You know, I'm dressing differently.
Mm-hmm.
I'm holding myself differently, and I'm just
Mm-hmm.
around, you know, people that I normally wouldn't.
Were you being paid separately? Like, were you being paid a salary, or were you being paid specifically just in the gifts and the dinners and the experiences and the work experience?
I was being paid specifically in the work experience. The exposure that he was giving me, I was also just graduated from cosmetology school, so I was getting hands-on experience to do the hair on the models. I was getting hands-on
Mm-hmm.
experience. By networking, I met so many, you know, business owners and people that needed their hair done, and so I ended up kind of accumulating early on through that work exposure from him, a clientele
That's
for
amazing.
then this a high-end salon I was working at.
And so while you were working for him or interning for him or having this, you know, transactional relationship with him, you were also going to cosmetology school?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I just took that time to my parents paid for cosmetology school. They said, don't worry about working. I had a job from 16 till about 18 and a half, almost 19. And then cosmetology school came, and it was only a 13-month program. And during that time, my family was like, just focus on cosmetology school. We'll pay for everything. Quit your job, get through the school, do the best that you can. And then also during that time is when I was starting to intern. So I still had work. I just wasn't being paid to do it. And it was
Mm-hmm.
flexible work too.
Mm-hmm. Valuable experience for what you wanted to do later.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what happened after this guy?
After this guy, I had just this life like altering, I don't know, just essence hit me. And I was like, I don't want to be in Seattle anymore. Like, this is not for me. And I just woke up, like, opened my eyes. I remember where I was. I was in downtown Seattle walking around, and I'm like, I need to go live. And this isn't, I don't feel like I'm living right now. And I don't know why I just got fluttered all of a sudden with all of these emotions. And I don't know, I guess just, I was in the moment of just listening to myself. And so from that moment, I started to put together everything I needed to move to Arizona, and packed up my car, moved to Arizona. And right when I got to Arizona, that's when I kind of started exploring seeking arrangement site again, is because I came to an area that I didn't know anyone. I didn't have a job, and I just kind of was like, why not? It was kind of like, I think Tinder was out during that time. It was kind of like Tinder, but Tinder was like for like serious dating or just sex or whatever. I don't know what it is nowadays. But so yeah, I came out here and I just started going on dates. And just dates. I never still wanted to explore anything sexual. And on those dates, I was still just had in mind someone that I can go do life activities with, a companion, but I wasn't ready yet to explore a transaction of giving myself in return for a companion and the things that I was looking for.
You're like, you get to hang out with me. That is what you are getting, sir. Okay.
Yeah.
You get my presence.
That's exactly it. Accept it.
Yeah.
And it was super crazy because I went on so many dates when I came here, and all of them in Scottsdale, Old Town, some in Paradise Valley, some in Ahwatukee. But I mean, majority of the men that I was going on dates with don't have on their profile that they're married. Or they do, and they're just honest, and they're honest with, hey, I am married, but I started to learn about all these stories of why are you married and on this site, and I started to explore my mind, like, what is going on here? Are these women doing something wrong in their marriage to like push the men away to seek outwards to other women? And so I started asking men questions on these dates, like, okay, so, you know, what's going on with your marriage? Because in that time, it's just very naive. And I thought that if I could learn from what these men are saying about what's going wrong with their marriages, that I'm going to put a list together to be the ultimate wife. Right?
Wow.
That's how I was receiving it. I was like, I'm gonna make sure, you know, I don't do that and I don't do this, and so that I can like. And then it started to scare me after a while, because I'm like, this list is pretty fucking big. Like, you have to
Wow.
be. And then after a while, I started thinking, I'm like, well, hold on, maybe it's not the women necessarily. It's not all on the women that are pushing, you know, their men away, but it still just was intriguing to me to always hear all these different stories, whether, you know, people were together just for financial reasons, or they were together because the love was lost. They didn't want to get divorced until their kids were, you know, 18, or simply lack of communication. And that one always made me laugh, because I'm like, you're coming into asking an arrangement from me and having clear communication on what you want out of me, but you're not going to go and try to communicate with your wife.
Right.
That would always bother me.
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
Out of all those dates, I never moved forward with an actual arrangement with any of those guys.
And so why do you think, like, how many like first dates did you go on, and why do you think none of them moved forward?
I went on about maybe 8 to 10 the first
Mm-hmm.
couple months that I was here. And none of them, again, I wasn't open to the idea of being sexual with anyone. And a lot of these men wanted something sexual in return. And I wasn't there yet mentally. I'm like, no, like, I just want a companion, and I'll cuddle and I'll give you my presents, but that's all you're going to get.
Right.
So that's why I wasn't mentally, for me, you have to mentally get me to want to be with you. You have to make me curious. I don't know, like, I'm very a mental person in
Mm-hmm.
order to be to want to be involved physically.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this about myself. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So you checked it out. You explored it. You were making notes mentally or otherwise about what these men were citing as their reason for being on the seeking arrangement site and doing this, and then what happened after that stretch of time?
After that, I was invited to, it was the Pacquiao fight. That was his last fight, I think, that he's ever done. And at someone's house, that actually, a man that I know of his house. And that this story is the story now that we begin to open up the doors of what my true last arrangement has been. And so I go to a family friend's house. We're sitting talking. He has all of these people at his house, beautiful, gorgeous house. And for the first time ever, like, we lock eye contact, And in that moment, I just knew. I knew he wanted more than just me being over there to enjoy the Pacquiao fight.
So just to back up a little bit, you were invited by a family friend, somebody that you've known for a while, who lived in Arizona, and he reached out and said, "Hey, you should join us for this event I'm having at my house." And so you said, "Okay, sure," and you were there.
Yep.
Okay, cool. And then you locked eyes and you said,
Lots
"Okay,
of guys knew in that minute that it was over.
game over."
Game over. I was like,
Game-
oh God. I mean, this guy was rich. I was comfortable with him. I've known him since, I don't even know, 15.
Mm-hmm.
He knows my parents. He grew up in Seattle. And there was just like this sense of like automatic security and comfort that I already had around him.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, from not that night, it was another night that he pretty much put me in a position to where I said yes to accepting an arrangement with him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was so natural. And again, because I was familiar with him, I think that's why I finally gave in to an actual physical relationship with him, was because I felt secure around him and comfortable. And that was now what you would call, or what you would hear of other people saying, a traditional daddy sugar baby arrangement. And that lasted about 3 years.
Okay. So a 3-year relationship. So my question to you, if I was hearing the story for the first time, I would say, wait a minute, if there was this older, rich gentleman that I was super attracted to, and that was super attracted to me, and we wanted to get together and explore a relationship, why was it an arrangement and not just a relationship?
The reason being is because he was married.
Okay.
He was married, and also, even if he wasn't married, my family knew him. They were very close with him. He's older than me. I think only about, I don't know, 13 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
Still younger than my parents, but older than me.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was no hope or interest even at the time for being in an actual relationship. It
On
had
your
to
side.
be on my side and his side too. It had to be an arrangement.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Okay. So you embarked on a relationship, on an arrangement. I'm sorry, on an arrangement. And did you explicitly talk about it, or was it just kind of like, okay, we're doing this and we kind of know what we're doing, or did you talk about it?
It was so effortless. I mean, this is like a diamond in the rough arrangement, because I never had to ask for anything from him. He just naturally had this character about him where one day, living in Arizona, it's easy for, flat tires to happen. And I had a flat tire, and my car was just sitting in my driveway. And all I asked him was, hey, do you have a referral company that you can send me their information so I can call them and get my tire replaced?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, I'll call you back in a little bit. Calls me back and says, you're going to have someone knocking on the door. They're going to pick up your car. They're going to give you a temporary car. I'm having all the tires replaced. Your windows need to be tinted. You live in Arizona. You can't be having, non-tinted windows. Detailed my car. I mean, this guy, I just asked him for a referral, and he just, boom, took care of paying for all of these things. I never had to ask him. We'd go on dates. He'd steal like My nail is chipped right now a little bit. He'd see that, you know, my nail's chipped, and he'd be like, here's $200, go get your, or $300, here's go get your nails done. He would just automatically take me out to dinner. I moved around a little bit. He always would throw me, you know, a couple $1,000 just to help pay for things, get settled into wherever I was living at the time. And it was so effortless. He just thought for me. Like he always put himself like in my shoes and like, this is what I would need and this is what I would want. And it was kind of like, in a way, he was doing it to kind of keep me not silent, but kind of in a way silent about our relation or our arrangement, so to speak. Looking back at it now, because I'm like, oh, 21, just receiving all these gifts. I never had to ask for a thing, and that was like my most mind-boggling part of it. Is most arrangements you're like, I need this amount of money for rent, and I want, you to pay for my hair getting done and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I never once had to ask for a single thing.
That's amazing. And this went on for 3 years. And I'm just like, I don't know if this is relevant, but I'm just thinking of like, you're in Arizona, he's married. Did it ever feel like odd, like when you were out with him and like if you'd be at a restaurant, or, I mean, were you ever worried about somebody that he knows would be in the same place and see you guys? Or
he would always take us to places where he knew the owners, or like most of the time, if it was just him and I, we would go kind of outside the main area of where he lived. Still nice places, but like more like maybe like downtown Phoenix or like North Scottsdale area. If we stayed kind of close in proximity to where he lived, he would invite a guy friend or two to join us. So it was always not just him and I to be spotted, but yeah, I mean, his wife had friends, but it was mainly like he knew everyone. And his wife stayed home. She didn't really go out and do much.
do you think his friends knew what was going on?
Oh, his friends knew entirely. I mean, I had 2 of his friends approach me and be like, hey, they would ask me when he was out of town, oh, when he's out of town, do you want to, be in an arrangement? I'll take you out. We'll have sex.
Stop.
We'll do these things.
Stop.
Yeah. And those moments made me feel borderline prostitution. And when I was in an arrangement with someone who never made me feel that way whatsoever. Right. And it even got to the point where I had to talk to the man that I was with about his friends and saying, hey, this is not okay. And that was kind of like the first time we ever had to set boundaries about other people knowing about us.
Wow. That's gnarly, dude. You've seen that movie Pretty Woman with Richard Gere, and
yes,
this sounds like Pretty Woman.
It totally, it was a dream. It was a dream, but it was real. And I mean, he bought me a new car. He took care of me in so many ways, and to where love did develop between us, but it was still, I had to learn how to hold back so much. Which also goes into the part of when we started to become, intimate, it was really killing the side of my upbringing, of my moral value and what's right and what's not. And when you start to kind of cut through and edge past your moral value and you break through those gates, holy shit, dude, like everything's game.
Right.
And then you're like, wait, what are boundaries now?
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of opened up for another conversation later, just a whole nother side of me that
Yeah.
I had to build back and build those walls back up of moral value and boundaries.
So for you, the boundary that you were the moral boundary you were breaking for yourself, I'm assuming was that because he was married, and so you felt like that was breaking that you were going against your own moral value. Is that right?
Yes, it really, really broke me down. And then to have a face on, I would still go and travel and see my parents for the holidays. And so for those 3 years, to go back and confront my parents, and then having a second, like having a big lie now physically in front of them, lying about, oh, yeah, I'm doing great. I'm living in this place and working, here. And in reality, it was like, this man has been supporting me through this whole life. And so now I'm lying to my parents, I'm lying to myself. And I just felt like I was betraying God in a way of everything that I knew I shouldn't be doing.
Now, looking back, what is it, like 7 years ago that you ended the relationship? Something like that? Or 5 years ago?
I ended it. It was just 4 years it was just 4 years this past Memorial weekend.
Right. You started 3 years ago. You ended 4 years ago. So do you still feel that way? Do you still feel like you acted immorally?
No.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So in the moment, because I was so young and I was so attached to still, my God, my beliefs, fresh out of living at home, with my parents, that it really struck me hard then. But now looking back at it, I feel like I don't know how to explain this. I feel like there was this part of me that needed to essentially break free from being so tied to what's okay and what's not okay, and to have a kinder heart on life and for myself. Being broken down as much as I was broken down, in the end has rebuilt me in this beautiful goddess, version of myself that I am today. And so I don't want to regret anything that I went through. And I also feel like in a way that was my path. That was God's path for me either way. I needed to go through that. I needed to break down to build myself back up in a different way, to now see the world with different eyes, much kinder eyes, and a little bit more love for people and their situations. And, my parents got divorced. My dad had cheated on my mom. And so I already experienced that. And now as an adult, being in a situation where I was the other woman, I can have a little bit of a better conversation with my dad and having a little bit more of an understanding with what his decisions were, and also, a little bit more sympathy and remorse for my mom and what she went through on her side, and other people and their, relationships. And it's also just helped me see clearly on the bullshit too that we have to deal with in today's modern relationships, infidelity and monogamy, and it's like, I have such a clear understanding now at a very young age to be like, this is what I don't need to fucking deal with, and this is what I'm willing to deal with.
I'm interested if you're willing to share what exactly is it that you're not willing to fucking deal with? Like, would you share with me what that is?
Yeah, I'm not willing to deal with. I'm not going to be trading, my body for. I'm not going to be in an arrangement anymore.
Yeah.
After that, the 3-year arrangement ended. I still had some sort of like living in survival mode because I was always used to having a crutch,
Mm-hmm.
which was him. He was my crutch. And so to take that away, and now I'm like, shit, I've got to really work hard. I got to pay these bills. I got to live within my means. I've got to relearn how to be independent
Mm-hmm.
again, which
Mm-hmm.
took some time. So what I'm not willing to deal with is when I start dating someone, someone that's just all about sex,
Mm-hmm.
all about sex. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I'm not sending you pictures. I'm not, like, I don't care if you do, if that's your thing. Like, if, some people like immediately send, sexual pictures, and that's great. But for me personally, I'm talking about, I want to get to know you as a person. So I'm not dealing with someone that immediately just wants to solely talk about sex anymore,
Mm-hmm.
because that doesn't matter to me. It does to a point, but within a relationship, again, going back to the beginning, you have to get me mentally into you to be then physically involved with you, and being more clear now that I don't have to just please someone. That's what I fell into for a long time, was that I needed to please a man to get what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
that's one of, I don't mess around with that anymore. If I don't want to do something, I'm not going to do it. And I give myself permission to not need to please someone to get what I want.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
amazing that you're able to crystallize that and those concepts um at the age you're at. I mean, remind me again, are you 27 going on 28?
I'm 28 going on
Oh
29,
my
dude.
God. To get my ages right. Wow. Oh yeah, and is your birthday in October?
September.
Oh my gosh. Honey. Um but no, it's beautiful, and it's like I think that there's this layer of societal programming that says that women should be people pleasers, right? And we um, grow up in this culture that um, either directly or indirectly, overtly or subliminally, or all of the above, kind of trains us and sets up a system where we're expected to kind of mold ourselves and bend ourselves and really manipulate people in order to be liked. I mean, really, that's what
Mhm.
people pleasing is. Attentional people pleasers. It's just a form of manipulation. But and then recognizing at a certain point that we have agency, that we have a say, that we don't owe anybody anything, including our smile, including our presence, much less sex, But at the same time, if that is what we want, we can have that too, right?
Yes. Yes. But
It's
it's
the
only if that's what you want.
right. Yeah, I think that's amazing. And so you let's kind of complete the story. So you spent 3 years in a relationship with this person, and then what made you finally leave that relationship, or how did that
I
go?
I came I moved away again, and I moved back to Seattle, moved back to my parents' house. And long story short, it's just I was confronting my parents all the time. I was trying to live without a crutch. Um, I I racked up my debt. I just felt really low in life. And being around my parents 24/7, seeing how they talked and hyped up this man that I was just, I'd been in a relationship with for the past 3 years, seeing them talk about him just constantly was like in my face. And I just started feeling all this, like my morals and my sins and all of it starting to come back. And it's like, I started developing panic attacks. I started having the worst sicknesses of my life because I started to really get into a deep state of depression, really, really deep state of depression, and so hard on myself. And this moment came where finally I didn't want to live in this state of stress and anxiety and feeling like I'm fucking up in everything that I'm doing. And I need to come clean. And so I finally told my parents. We were all Memorial weekend drinking out at our second house. And I had a friend from LA in town with me. And so she was kind of like there as my moral support to tell my story to my parents.
Wow.
And so I told them, and they reacted in a way that I never would have imagined. I thought they were going to immediately be like, get your shit, get out of our house. You're a disgrace. You should be ashamed of yourself. Like all the things that I was thinking, like of myself already. I thought that they were going to, like, those words were going to come out of their mouths. And it totally didn't. They did quite the opposite. My mom and my dad and I were all holding each other on our knees, crying. And they just felt so upset that they thought that, they didn't do a good job protecting me, from their friend. And that they felt sad that I couldn't talk to them earlier about this, that I let it evolve for 3 years. And there's so many things conversations that we had for them, questions they asked me, like, what did he do for you? Like, how did it get started? And they just responded to my truth with so much love. It was just beautiful. And the first week after, I still felt like just this rush of just shame, hurtfulness. I was like, I felt so uncomfortable in my own skin that I didn't want to be in Seattle anymore. I didn't want to be around my parents. I just wanted to get up and go. And they supported that. But there's also this sense of true freedom. Like, I've been fighting so much within myself that once I finally came clean to my parents, and then they also provided that support and love that I needed, it was just this automatic, like, uplifting experience where I was like, okay, let's go get Ashley back together. And that's kind of what started the journey of, I had lost so much self-love for myself within those 3 years. And it doesn't sound like a long time, but it really is to lose yourself. I started, this guy gave me a lifestyle that wasn't my reality. I couldn't afford any of this stuff that I was doing. I was going clubbing, getting bottle service. Showing my friends like how awesome of a lifestyle I have, and dressing a certain way, acting a certain way. It was so not me. I'm actually disgusted with how I acted in a way, but I'm also glad that I got to experience that part of me to then come out of that reality, or false reality, the facade, I should say, lifestyle that I was living, and then come back to being more grounded and falling in love back with myself now 4 years later, after coming clean about that whole experience to my parents.
I appreciate you sharing this with me. And it just makes me think about, I look back on my 20s, and even my 30s, at least the first half of my 30s. And I do think back and go, I don't really like who I was a lot of the time in my 20s. Um, and so when you're talking about you kind of looking at yourself in kind of a negative way, and I mean, I think that for me at least, there's value in kind of looking back and then saying, gosh, look, I've come so far, I've evolved. But I mean, I'm hearing this and I'm thinking about myself, and I just want to say, oh, but love her, love her, because she was doing the best she could, and even though sometimes the things we did and the way we acted and the whatever, we can look back on it and just makes us cringe. And again, I'm speaking about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And, we ought also to remember to love that girl, love that girl, because she was trying, and she was fighting the good fight, and she's here today to fight another day. You know what I mean? Like, the evolution and the path that you took is important. And as you said earlier, it was probably the path you were absolutely meant to take. And there's going to be more twists and turns, right? I mean,
yeah.
If you think the rest of it's a straight shot, you're wrong.
No, and I'm okay with it.
You're like, no.
After going through this.
I just want to encourage you to look back at that time in your life with compassion for yourself. You know what I mean?
I couldn't for the longest time. I want to say the first 2 years moving away from Seattle back to Arizona. I thought that I was depressed in Seattle, and there's no way. Once I was truly alone, and then surviving to pay, my bills, I was living still a life of what I thought other people perceived, or I was living, I still felt like people were looking at me and expecting so much out of me. Mm-hmm. And so I was trying to get these jobs that had titles, executive assistant to blah, 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 or a manager of this. And then I'm, chose a place to live where it was just glamorous apartments, and I was still mentally trapped. And it wasn't, and to the point where the depression then became suicidal. And then it wasn't finally until I woke up one day. Again, I was just so hard on myself. And then when you're alone and you get caught up in your negative thoughts are everything. And that's, I was introduced to Joe Dispenza, which you know of, 2 years after I moved to Arizona, and his whole process has really helped me. But what I didn't get introduced to Joe Dispenza's neurology and neuroscience talk until after I woke up in the hospital on life support alone.
When was this?
This was right before I met you.
Honey.
This was right before I met you. And I was labeled as Jane Doe. Nobody knew who I was. No one was there when I awoke, freaking out with this tube down my throat. That is how bad my depression got, of me being so hard on myself for allowing myself to get into an arrangement with this man and rely on someone else and not be independent, and then also just be struggling to still put on a facade. It was just like, it was all so much. And I knew in that moment, right, like a couple days afterwards, after I got back out of the hospital that I don't want to end my life as Jane Doe.
Mm-mm.
I want to end my life, well, when my life ends, as someone that had purpose and love and helped others, because I want to have a mark on someone in this life, or many people in this life. And from that moment on is when I made a promise to myself, let's gain your self-love back. Let's get your independence back. Let's start getting how you were raised, your mental business aspect, your motivation, your drive. Let's get you back on the bandwagon and start going. And then shortly after that, Joe Dispenza came into my life, Wayne Dyer. I was listening to Abraham Hicks. You came into my life. Just being surrounded by boss women with motivation, it's like, it's inspiring, and it's exactly what I needed. And then now I've been here 4 years. So the first 2 years were just shit, crap, like, and craziness. And then these last 2.5 years have just been focused on love and exploring who is Ashley out of everything that she's been through. Who are you? Who do you want to be? What do you want to do? Like, let's get yourself back into just getting creative and helping others and love. And like, let's get you back in a state of love and not a state of depression. And so it doesn't just happen overnight. But
it doesn't happen by accident. It sounds like you've realized it's your responsibility.
Yes.
I mean, I haven't heard anything in what you're saying where you designate yourself as a victim.
No, they were all my own choices. In the moment when the beginning of the arrangement, call him Brad, with Brad, it was just a rush. It was a rush of, he came on to me so heavily that it was a rush of, is anyone going to believe me when there was a slight victim, aspect in my thoughts when he came on to me and we initially started our arrangement of like, is anyone going to believe me? This is so morally bad in so many in different ways, but there was also this sense of like security and comfort. And so in the beginning, I did feel a little bit of a victim, but then that just disappeared, because from then on, I still chose to move forward.
But do you think maybe that you were trying to assuage your guilt about the fact that you were, you knew that he was married and he had a wife, and that maybe you were like, oh wait, but he came on to me, and so I was overwhelming, and or do you think there is a little bit of older man took advantage of a power dynamic and the situation at the time, or both?
I'm right in between. It's both.
Yeah,
it's 100% both.
And I want to go back to what you were saying about, you were saying just right now that it's morally wrong and really putting a hammer on that. But, as I was doing this research and kind of thinking through this and hearing your story, I absolutely, my personal opinion is I don't attach any morality to this kind of arrangement. I don't think there is such a thing in this situation as a sin or good or bad or moral or immoral. I think when you have two consenting adults who want to engage in a transactional form of dating, whether it's sex or no sex, whether the person's married or not married, that it's like, it's the way somebody wants to live their life and, engage with another person. And his infidelity is between him and his wife.
Correct.
And, so I think everybody can have their own opinion, just like everyone can decide for themselves the morals that they want to live in, and the boundaries in the life, and what's going to make them live at peace with themselves. And so I don't think that this is a black and white situation, but
No.
I just want to say that, I don't have, for me, and maybe it's because I've never really been in that type of situation. I'm not saying that there aren't downsides, or that there aren't negative side effects for being in this relationship, depending on, where you're coming from. But I do think it could be completely, it makes sense to me. I mean, to me, it just makes sense
I
to me.
agree. Looking back at it now, like I can sit here and I can agree with you. And I'm expressing like in those moments of what I was feeling because of my upbringing, that had a big part to play in my shame.
Yeah.
It was his infidelity, but it was my shame somehow.
Right. Now,
I'm like,
that's interesting. So why do you think you took that on? I mean, I know you explained earlier that you were lying to your parents, and so that was against the way you want to be, and also because it was like a family friend. So that was another layer for you. So do you think if this person was totally a stranger, I wonder if you would have had the same feeling of shame or feeling of wrongness?
well, he opened up the gates. Like I said, once you go through those gates of breaking down boundaries and barriers of what is okay and what's not okay, that also led to a world where I was not shameful whatsoever, with other people. So yes, to answer your question, I was not ashamed of myself if I was with another married man during that time. But it only was because of the history that
Okay.
Brad and I had. It was so unique that's what brought out this shamefulness inside me.
Right. Yeah.
And
So go ahead.
the books that, the state of affairs, I mean, she says it perfectly in her book of how someone can feel, so how someone can feel when someone's being, when someone is cheating on their mistress, or like how the mistress could feel. And she just brings out all these different emotions and thoughts. And like you said, everyone is going to have their own opinion. So just because I'm saying one thing and how I felt in that moment,
Yeah.
I don't feel that way now looking back at it.
Right.
I feel completely fine. And I still love that version of me. I've learned to love that version.
That's
of me,
amazing.
but it took time to get to that point to say, no. Don't sit here and try to hide it and put a curtain over it like it never happened. It fucking happened. So accept it. The more that you accept the things that happen to you, the more you're able to live more better in the now.
I totally agree. And I think that you talking about this and sharing it is a huge, step in shining a light and kind of taking away that shame, because I don't think it's shameful. Not that what I think, is what is, but I'm just saying, I mean, I don't really see shame having any part in our life. It's like you do the best you can in the moment with what you got. If we're learning and we're growing and we're making, different decisions later in life that make us feel better and good, then That's the point, right? I mean, like we're here to work it out. We're here to play with being human. We're here to play with emotions and love and our physical bodies and to, stay curious, as you said, stay curious about, our experiences and what it means and how we feel. I mean, um, so, I think it's
Just
great that you're talking about it.
just learning to love yourself helps open up so many doors and opportunities. And part of the reason why I want to tell my story and allow this unspoken world to be talked about, I want to dive further into that with other people because I know what I went through, but some other people could have gone through way worse or not that bad and had a great time, and that's great. But when it comes to the moment where you become suicidal, from that moment is a decision to then come back to life, if that's your decision, and then moving forward to make every day a good day to die.
Right.
Because it's like, hey, I want to give purpose and I want to give other people a voice by sharing my voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I want people to know that nothing like my story is worth the shame, the guilt, the depression, to think that you need to go to that extreme measure of suicide.
Yes, honey, absolutely. Absolutely. And that, honestly, unless you're literally physically harming another person, you're going to go to sleep and wake up, it's going to be better the next day. I mean, obviously, if you do something horrible that affects somebody, like you injure them or, anything like that. But if you're in some kind of entanglement and you're, doing something that's not in alignment with yourself and it's creating these feelings of depression and anxiety and self-loathing or whatever it is, it's like, it is not the end of the world. This is what I can tell you at the age of 50 is that, like, how many times, think about how many more times in the next, 20 to 2 years, you're going to go through different ups and downs and different, I mean, it's a lot. And one of the things I've learned more and more is that everything seems so horrible at a certain point. They say that it's the darkest right before the dawn, right? Yeah, it always
Yes.
feels horrible. And and luckily I've never struggled with depression so bad that I wanted to kill myself, but I have struggled with very, very debilitating anxiety. And it's not life ending as long as nobody's physically getting hurt, and like there's no abuse going on. It will get better. You can get through this. And I think, but to your point though, to one of your points, which is you've been able to kind of dip into this world, come out of this world. You're still processing it. And
Mm-hmm.
but what I think the big picture, what it shows is it's a slippery slope, is what you're saying too. And depending on people's backgrounds, how they were raised, what are their motivations for getting into these kinds of arrangements, who is the person like that they're in these arrangements with? Are they kind? Are they loving? Or are they manipulative and psychotic and abusive and controlling and who knows what else? You know what I mean? It's a slippery slope and it can be a very precarious lifestyle, and
Correct.
it can be probably difficult. It could be difficult for some people to, extract themselves from. But what I do
But it
admire,
also could be beautiful too. It could be a really beautiful experience for a lot of people if you're, again, clear on your intent.
yeah. I mean, I think that this is one of the really cool things about arrangements is that people say exactly what they want and exactly what they don't want. and what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do. And all of this becomes almost like it's like a prenuptial agreement. It's like a pre-relationship agreement. That you're
Absolutely.
like, okay, let's get the things on the table. Let's seal the deal. Okay. And now let's commence,
Mhm.
and I love this. And I think you can take that same, and which sounds like what you're doing. You're taking those same skill sets of communicating at the onset. And by the way, what you're communicating and what you want and what your goals and boundaries are at this point on the, at 28 years old might be completely different than when you're, 40 or when you're 50, when you're 60, depending on what's life
Yeah.
circumstances you
Yeah.
have. I mean, I know for me, the kind of the terms I was attempting to negotiate when I was 35 are completely different than the terms I'm negotiating at 50. And,
Mhm.
but the common theme is know what the hell you want. How about know what
Being
you want?
self-aware.
What
Yeah, self-aware and being honest with
what you want
yourself.
and what you don't want. And why would you be afraid to tell a potential relationship person that you might be in any kind of relationship with? Why would you be afraid? I mean, I know why we would be afraid, because we kind of like, oh, that person's cute. I kind of want to hang out with them. And if I tell them what I really want or what I don't want, then maybe they won't want to hang out with me. But guess what? It's like if you say what you really, really want, the people that want what you want are going to be attracted to you. And then
Yeah.
you get what you want.
Yeah. It's pretty damn simple. It really is. And it's like the more that I am putting it out there, manifesting and saying like, this is what I want, I'm like receiving guys, not receiving guys.
I'm in a receiving line of men.
Yes. Um, I just try to explore even, getting in a relationship with my best friend, because I came down, from this journey that where I started and where I'm at now, I became so in love with myself that I'm now giving myself permission to be loved.
Mm.
I haven't allowed myself to be loved in a really long time. And I saw that, my best friend loves me and I know that I love him. So let's try to explore, like, can we turn that love into like being in love with each other? He was a beautiful person, and it was just a nice, like, finally to be able to get to a point where the point of the story is to be able to get to a point where I now see that I deserve love. And then the next guy that comes into my life, maybe he'll be here for a long time. Maybe he's just another person I need to work on something else with.
Right.
I don't care. I'm open to accepting all forms of love right now,
Yeah.
whether it's temporary or long term. But
Ooh, I
I
love
know.
that. I love that. I'm open to accepting all forms of love right now. Ooh, so good.
Yes.
So good.
It's awareness with yourself, and it's God. It's just like I feel my heart coming out of my chest like most days, because I
Mhm.
it's coming inward now, inward to external versus just
Ooh,
keeping up a wall that I've broken down.
yes,
and it's just amazing when you start living with love.
it is. And I think what's interesting is I'm just going to speak specifically about you, because I know you and I know you very well. And I've always seen you this way. This is what's really interesting to me, because we probably did meet about, I mean, let's see, I've been divorced for 3 years and we were working together before I was divorced, right? So it had to be 3.5 years ago, at least.
Yeah.
Something, or maybe it was 3 years. Maybe it was 3 years. You start working with me right as I was getting a divorce? Yeah. Because
Yeah.
Danielle introduced, that was 3 years ago. But I've
Yeah.
always seen you this way. Like, I've always seen you as this glowing ball of joyous amazingness. That's what I was attracted to when I first met you. I was like, oh my God, she's smart, she's cool, she's got great experience, and she's got this energetic field that I just want to be around. And it's like, when that you, Ashley, start seeing and loving yourself the way others naturally see you without even
Mhm.
trying, it's like,
Mhm.
why do we as individuals have a hard time seeing ourselves, for lack of a better way to explain it, the way God sees us, right? Why do we have a problem loving ourselves the way others can love us, the way our mothers love us, right? That's the kind of love we get to grow for ourselves.
Yeah.
And when you're really connecting with that, then it becomes the law of attraction, right? Then it's just like this
Mhm.
magnetic field that you're pulling towards you.
Yep.
And you're in that space right now.
100%. 100%. I'm in that space, and no, I mean, when you get to a point where I'm at, to overcome your past, your traumatic experiences. Everyone's got trauma, everyone's got baggage, but when you actually overcome them, and then you're like, wait a second, I I have always told myself I don't deserve this. I was so hard on myself, saying that I, deserve to be unhappy, and I self-sabotage is what it's called. Some people go through this state of self-sabotage and get stuck in that, and that's when they don't realize love or experience love. And so to come out of that and saying, I don't need to live in self-sabotage anymore. I deserve things. I deserve to be loved. I deserve peace of mind. I deserve to be financially happy. It's not just one thing, it's usually multiple things. And then to get yourself to a state of being in alignment with yourself and what you do deserve, that becomes the beauty of living.
Mm-hmm.
And attracting people like, like yourself in my life and yours. And so many other people. I finally have a solid friend group that's just there.
Mm-hmm.
Just a solid support friend group. Like I can say anything and not be ashamed of anything, whether it's, my romantic life, my financial state, my family, it could be anything. It's like to finally get yourself to a point where I don't care what I say anymore. I don't care. I've let myself free in so many aspects where I'm now just like, no, I'm doing me 24/7.
Yeah.
And no one's going to stop me.
Yeah. I love that.
And it feels really, really good to be soaring up high and being like, wow, I survived all of my own bullshit, so to speak.
Right. Very good. Well, is there anything we want else to say about just this idea of arrangements, or you think we've covered it? I think we've.
I think we've covered it. Whether it's neither good, it's not bad. It's another way of having a partner in your life, having someone in your life. And if you're going to be involved with it, just be 100% content with and honest with yourself on what you're willing to give and what you're willing to, what you want to receive and what you want to give, because the clearer you are, the better the arrangement is going to be for the both of you. And then there's no, there's no years later trauma that I experienced. Right. And so I wouldn't necessarily get in another one today, but I also am not going to tell people not to get in one.
Right. Well,
I'm very neutralized now.
I also think, though, that modern relationships can be, the word arrangement, whatever, but all relationships are a negotiation. All relationships are a give and take. every relationship, each person gives things and receives things, and those things are negotiated over time. And if you can't come to an agreement, you end the relationship, and if we stop pretending that relationships are not negotiated arrangements, that where we're mutually satisfied, you know what I mean? That's really what a successful relationship is where there's a successful negotiation where both parties have mutual satisfaction. And every relationship is different. All of those terms are negotiated, are different in each relationship. But I think what your point is, and I totally agree, is if we can bring this idea of clear communication into not only our romantic relationships, but all of our relationships.
Yeah, whether it's with family, friends,
career,
work.
Yes.
Work. If I came into an interview clear of what I'm worth and what I'm willing to give and do and what I want out of that career, I'm going to get what I want.
Right.
And I'm going to give, to, what my boss is expecting of me. But I mean, it's in all relationships. It's not just this, which is the beautiful part.
Yeah. And I think the more honest we can be, first of all, getting really in touch with what's important to us, and then being really good at practicing communicating those things, we're going to have more joy and more pleasure and more safety and more everything in our relationships. It's really the message is communication. And, there is something quite honest about, these arrangements where they're just putting it all on the table. And again, as long as you can just accept it for what it is and not be in this moral turmoil, torturous, kind of uncertainty about what it all means, And I think you had circumstances that were definitely complicating it for sure,
But if you were to remove that, and if I were to know that I needed to be more honest with myself and clear, things would have gone, those 3 years would have been way different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Way different.
Okay, dear. So do you want to tell the 4 listeners that I have where to find you, or where they can learn more about what you're up to, or just follow you on Instagram? What do you want to tell us?
Yeah. So I recently started a blog called Money, Sex, and Status. It's moneysexandstatus.com. And I'm going to just talk more in depth about my story, more detailed about what happened through really those 3 years, the depression state, where I'm at today, how the goddess within me awoken, what I've done since the goddess in me awoken, and what I want to continue to do moving forward. And I really want to allow this blog to evolve into a place where people can, talk and communicate, and it be a support program or a support place for people to seek help or just comfort in, maybe the arrangement that they're in. I'm going to allow it to evolve to whatever beautifulness it's going to be, but that's where you can find me, and you can find my contact information on that website.
Awesome. All right, dear. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.